agenda. Let's go ahead and get started. We do have a couple of things. The first thing is I wanted to pass it to Paul to give, oh, sorry, actually, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's review the agenda. Does everyone approve? Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as written? This is just the Parks and Rec Committee. I'll make a motion to adopt. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Has everyone reviewed the minutes?
Yep.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes as written?
No motion.
Do I have a, all in favor? Oh, sorry. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Okay. Now I'm going to pass it to Paul, who's going to give us an update on the Centennial Fun Run.
So the Centennial is going to include parking in the Grabhorn area, and that'll be the parking for the main events over at Veterans Park. So we have been asked, and also it's a great opportunity for us to help with the parking, and we will be taking the proceeds. We're going to be asking every car for $5. And the proceeds will be split by us and the dance.
No.
Oh. Us and the dance squad or dance team. So what we're gonna need is representatives from the Parks and Rec Committee to sign up for just 2 hours. And the dance team will also do 2 hours. So basically it's over Friday and Saturday. So we want to do 2 hours only because it's simple and we want to make sure everybody can go to the event. And we'll have signups online. Whoever from the Parks and Rec Committee can sign up, and you can actually put what day and what hours you can attend to help with the event. It's real simple. Basically, in the mornings, you're going to help set up the taping and stuff for the parking and Grabhorn. And then when cars come in, you're going to tell them where to park and ask for a donation.
Thank you. Brian, you had a comment that you wanted to share?
Oh, yeah. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I just getting a little concerned about even getting volunteers for the 100-year celebration, because the community club's running thin on volunteers and the booster club too. Actually, the community club wanted the boosters to take over doing the sauerkraut sandwich in the future, and there's just
We just lost you there, Brian.
Brian, we lost you.
hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm gonna hop back off real quick.
Okay. Well, until he comes back, Dana, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there with you all in person, but I just wanted to let you know that tonight is going to be my last meeting as an official committee member. It's been a great 3 years working with everyone, and I'm really excited about everything that we've accomplished, but I need to take some time off for family and work stuff with the council, so this will be my last meeting with you. I will still be an alternate rep for the Watershed Council on the GPAC until that's done. So if there's questions related to that or anything I can help with, just let me know.
I have a question. Do we have someone that's taking your spot with the South Caboose Creek work that you've done?
Well, Nicole is the official Watershed Council representative already on the GPAC.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't know that. So I wanted to say is that there's a few booths available at the Centennial that will be no charge. There's actually 6 booths available, and if you guys were interested or you knew of someone who was interested to help maybe set up a booth for the creek restoration, we have a couple of booths open for Friday and Saturday.
Okay,
Veterans Park.
yeah, we'll look into that and put something together. Thanks for letting me know.
Well, you will be very missed, Dana. You have been a great asset.
It's been
Yeah.
really fun, so I trust you all will continue to do great work on the parks.
Brian, you're back. You want to finish your thought?
Yeah, hopefully I'm not sure what happened. It just like cut out really a second. It just I'm just concerned that they're gonna have enough volunteers. The organizer says that she's gonna have lots of volunteers, but the Sauerkraut Festival, most of her volunteers didn't show up, and Booster Club and the Community Club they're just short on members. It's getting harder and harder to get volunteers every year, and it's gonna be really, I don't know how they're gonna do this event, that's one thing I'm getting concerned more in the future is like, if we're doing any events, the city's going to have to figure out a way to get people more engaged. I'm not sure because I mean, people are just burned out, they're, you got the same people volunteering over and over again. And, it just gets tiring.
Yeah. So Mary, did you have a comment?
Yeah, where exactly is the information about volunteering? The website that I just looked at doesn't have any specific information, but where can you sign up?
Yeah, so we were waiting for the Eventbrite plugin to be completed and approved by the committee, and it was tonight. And basically, by tomorrow, there'll be a link that you can go on and pick whatever you want to volunteer for, whenever you want to, and for how long, and you can put your name right in. So it's a really slick website. It's not just collecting names. You can actually see what's open, where you can help out, and sign up right there. And that'll be on the site tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there the potential to offer any incentives for volunteers, like a T-shirt or something like that?
I'm glad you asked. So every volunteer gets a T-shirt and this beautifully laser engraved wooden medallion, that's wood,
Oh.
that says "Embracing the Future, Scappoose Centennial." So that's not bad. 2 hours work.
Very nice. Right. Well, thank you, everybody. It is 6 o'clock. So with that, I would like to close out the Parks and Rec and move into GPAC. So has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Kara, can I make a
Yep.
motion to add a pool discussion to the agenda?
Yes. We do not have a culvert update, correct? So we'll have the time. Okay. So we'll add that after the update from the City Council progress report. Okay, so in case everyone didn't hear Kim, we're going to add a pool discussion in line 2.2 because we were not able to, the city was not able to meet with the ODFW regarding the culvert. So do I have a motion to adopt the agenda with the changes?
I motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes as written?
Move to adopt.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Great. Okay. We do not have any public comment tonight, so we can skip that. So then with new business, we have an update from the city council for our progress report. All in all, I think it went very well. I mean, one of the top things that they mentioned was that they were really impressed with the amount of work that we had put in. Um, at this point, like I think they were blown away by the amount of time and the information we've collected. And so that's just something like, put it to you guys. Kim mentioned that, I mean, we have been really fortunate to just have all of you guys here, because you guys have made this so much easier with all the effort that everyone has put in. And so that did not go unnoticed by city council, which was fantastic. I just thought that was really, really good to hear, and great feedback. There were a couple of things. So I'm going to speak on some of the discussions regarding like just the overall main points I took away, and then some of the amenities points, and then Kim will speak to some points she took away for the road and pool. One thing that we learned was that there is Cathead Park is on the table for a potential dog park. That's more commonly known as we've talked about it as kind of like the airport park. It's 14 acres. Part of it is wetlands, so that's something we need to consider. The mayor was also interested in creating multiple dog parks. So that's just also something to think about when we're looking at sizing and placement of things. We might also consider, it's definitely on the table to think about having a few dog parks. The city was very aware that sports fields are in short supply, and one of the counselors had already dealt with a really frustrating sports season over the COVID process. So one of the counselors, I believe, has children on soccer teams, and so has firsthand dealt with the kind of, do we have a field, do we not have a field kind of dilemmas. They were really interested. The mayor said that he was interested in a potential one-stop shop for fields, where there would be one person who could kind of delegate who had what fields at one time for both the school fields and the city recreational fields. Of course, that's going to be something that would have to be something down the line. But I think when we are back to full Parks and Rec sessions, I think that's something that we might want to consider and heavily look into. With regards to how we are going to have our final presentations, there was some discussion prior to the progress report regarding road versus no road. And so the mayor actually did suggest that we could have 4 options: with a pool, without a pool, with a road, and without a road. Another counselor also suggested that we could potentially just prioritize. So if we just go in and say, these are our top 3 amenities, we'd like to see this in the park. So as we are deliberating, those are a couple of different options that we can be thinking about. It might be ideal to be able to draw things out. I'm kind of a visual person, so we might want to just kind of lay things out. And also when we do our forum, that might we might choose to have some layouts. In the I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at the forum concept that I sent out that came from Nicole, but they just had some options and people were able to just vote on, do you like this mound or do you like this berm? Or, and so it wasn't a full layout design. It just had 4 separate options of included items. And so those are just things to consider.
Yeah, so we presented the information on the roads and pools that we had shared with you guys, I think the Thursday prior. We did get a couple of questions back from City Council requesting some additional information. One of those related to the initial survey of residents relating to Grabhorn Park and our interpretation that there was a 20-to-1 kind of opposition to in favor of putting a road through. So getting some clarification from Isaac and Huel on that. If you guys would please just relay back to the president of the council that it was 20% of the people who offered a qualitative response, not necessarily 20 to 1 of the whole data set. That'll satisfy her question about that. Additionally, they had questions. The mayor questioned some of the information we brought to the table about closing roads in parks, saying that that really related to larger parks, and asked us to go back and look at how roads and through traffic is being treated for smaller parks. That's one thing we'll continue to look at. Another item, remind me, was there? I can refer back to my notes.
On the spot,
I
sorry.
think that was, I think those were the two biggest information.
Safety data,
Back. Was it?
safety data, like didn't he want to know, they were talking about like speed bumps versus.
Oh, yes, sorry, traffic, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Traffic calming, other traffic calming measures, because we had discussed bollards and speed bumps and a locking gate with the chief of police and the fire chief. So another council member asked if there were additional considerations that we could make for our work on the whole traffic flow through the park. So we'll continue to research those. Yeah, overall, I agree with Kara's assessment. I think they were pleased. I think we exceeded their expectations in the update. And I think we're moving along at a pace that will definitely be able to, timeline of this whole project.
Agreed. Right. Any questions regarding, I was so happy to see a few of you guys had popped on for the council meeting. Did anybody have any questions, thoughts regarding council?
I have a question, which it's great to hear that the Cat Head property is on the table. What is the means to see what or how much land is actually available to develop there?
So I had spoke with Isaac and Huel about this, and they are going to discuss it with ODFW when they have the opportunity. Jim was also able to go out and at least check it out and find some spots that may be appropriate. And then we were going to attempt to see if there would be an opportunity to go out with the city at some point to see what is possible.
The second thing is that is it appropriate or not appropriate? I don't know. With regards to dogs going to the bathroom, etc., into wetlands. I don't know if that's an issue or not. I just don't know if it was brought up. Obviously, there'd be a lot of urine and feces and whatever into wetlands. I just think we should at least ask the question if that's appropriate in that area. That's all.
Yeah.
I will bring that up with ODFW when we meet.
Any other questions? Oh, Jim?
Yeah, as far as the wetlands themselves, I believe the city has already promised that there won't be any substantial encroachment, and being in an actual wetland habitat wouldn't really be conducive to a dog park. So I doubt that would become an issue, but it's certainly worth checking out.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, it appeared that there were some, and correct me if I'm wrong, just going off of your email, Jim, that there were some places that were not immediately in wetlands that could be set aside for a dog park area versus the actual wetlands area.
Yeah, it looked as though the portion of the Cat Head property that is on the inside of the curve in the road there toward the airport is level. It appears to be being used as a field right now. I'm not sure what they're growing there, but it's covering the whole area. And it seems that berm created by the road protects the wetlands that are obviously very prevalent on the portion of the property that is on the outside of the curve in the road there.
I'm confused. I thought the property that we're looking at is actually below the curve. The stuff inside the curve is actually not part of the 14 acres. What I saw was outside the curve, which is a triangle shown on the Columbia County maps, is outside the curve. Inside the curve is airport property that is set up to be hopefully developed.
So
From
if
what
you're
I-
referring,
From what I could
Sorry.
see, on all of the maps, including Google Maps and overhead, part of the Cathead property, or at least the lines that I've seen drawn for it, extend onto that flat land on the inside of the curve.
I was referencing the 2017 Parks Master Plan, which actually, I think it's park number 11, that states that it's on the outside of the curve.
Okay. Yul or Isaac, did you have?
yeah, I would need to pull it up. I mean, for everything that I know is that property is east of the road. So
Okay.
as that road bends around and it heads north, and Isaac's actually got it there on the screen.
There. Yep.
So everything west of that road is part of the East Air Park development.
Okay.
East Air Park Industrial Development. I apologize.
I'm sorry, what map are you looking at? I don't see it.
Jim, are you able to see the map?
I see that now, yeah.
Okay.
And
Everything west of that road is part of the development.
So I
Part
think
of
the
what
best,
development?
I think best thing going
Not
forward.
part of Cathead, what you're saying? Not part of Cathead is what you're saying? Everything on the inside of the curve?
That's correct.
Okay.
As far as I could tell from what I could see, everything on the outside of the curve is essentially wetland habitat
Okay.
until
Okay.
you get to a fence with a no trespassing sign that I assume is a border to another piece of property.
Make a hell of a disc golf course with a lot of hazard.
Well, I think that the best thing going forward would be to consult with ODFW, and it'd be helpful to walk this and to really see what was possible before we made any, before we get too far along in the planning.
Agreed.
Oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but ultimately DSL and the Army Corps of Engineers are going to be who determines what you can and can't do in the wetlands,
Okay.
just so you know. And so, you know, I can give you some local contacts, like Dan Carey is a great place to start, but I mean, that's pretty far outside the scope of where we're at, I think. I mean, that's really, you get to talking to them when you're like putting in applications for permits and you have designs and stuff. So I don't know that they would comment this early on in the process, but that would be who you need to talk to about wetlands and lakes is DSL and Army Corps of Engineer.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Then. Right. Do we have any other, and I can't see if we have any hands up. Okay, any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
So, Mary, do you have your hand up?
I did not mean to. Maybe I forgot to put it down.
I guess I would just add to this conversation that we did make the recommendation to City Council that an appropriate spot to relocate the dog park would be identified before any construction or deconstruction of the dog park occurred, and they did seem in favor of that.
They absolutely did. Yes.
This turns out, I mean, I think further investigation of this property needs to be done
Yes.
to determine if it's appropriate or not.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Kim.
Yeah, so just wanted to discuss some new information relating to pools. And Isaac, thank you for circulating the rural Oregon pool cost document. It's really informative and I think grounding in terms of what the real operating and operating costs as well as revenue costs are for pools of similar size to what we're perhaps considering for the community. It looks to me, kind of when you average them out and look, that we the pool operating costs reflected in the survey may not be accurate operating costs that other communities are experiencing. And I do want to really acknowledge Yul and Isaac in putting together the pool survey. They were working on a very, very tight timeline, and such a tight timeline that the Parks and Rec Committee wasn't even able to really review and provide input on the pool survey. So I think they were really working with the best set of information that was available at the time. Just to give you guys a sense of, and please, you guys chime in if I'm not interpreting these numbers correctly. If I'm looking at some of these other pool costs, the actual operating costs on average are about $75,000 to $100,000 deficit, where in the pool survey we'd presented to the community, we were estimating potentially a $500,000 funding gap that would need to be filled with additional property taxes. Have I interpreted that correct?
The reason that we made that decision was because we were directed to assume zero cost recovery from receipts from pool entrances and the such, partly because it's very difficult to try to estimate what those might be. And trying to do that off of the Eisenschmidt pool in St. Helens would be also difficult because there's not really a good way to tell how many people come from Scappoose to swim there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So given this new information, I am concerned about the quality of information that we'll be receiving from this latest pool survey. And I kind of have a saying in my job, sometimes no data is better than bad data because operating from bad data can lead you to bad conclusions. So I would recommend that maybe one of the formal recommendations from this group be that we ask City Council to not consider the information coming from the pool survey for this project and future pool considerations potentially. And I don't know if we have to formalize that tonight, but I would like to just put that on the table for when we put our formal considerations to City Council.
Well, when we're looking at the data, looking at the it generally shows like the estimated cost of admissions for several things. And then, so what was the reason for choosing not to add in admissions and recovery costs? Be interested to know that.
So Isaac, do you want to repeat that for the record?
So the reason that we chose to not count cost recovery was because at first it's very difficult to consider that. Second, there's no way for us to estimate how many people might use a pool. The different pools, right? We have outdoor pools and indoor pools,
Right.
and those are open different times of the year and different amounts of time, different lengths of time. And a lot of the things that impact people using the pool are the cost to get in, whether they have one in their yards, and things like that. And it was hard for us to quantify how many people from Scappoose might go to a pool and what they might pay to get into a pool. And without that data, it was impossible for us to figure out what cost recovery might be. However, if you do look at the data for entrances and entrance fees in similar pools, you'll see you'll see the range of them, and you'll see about how many users there are, and then you will also see that there's still a deficit. But we were directed to ignore cost recovery, to assume that we would not be able to recover enough cost, and to make the balance out between indoor pools and outdoor pools because the operating costs are also different.
So the other thing I'll mention is when Isaac and I were putting together that research, you have to make a lot of assumptions about how you're going to structure that. So, particularly for operating costs, it's to give an accurate the truest number we could in terms of operating costs would require us to know a far greater amount of detail about what the facility would look like, how many potential users would visit the pool, whether or not it would be a seasonal pool or an all year round pool. All of those factors would affect the operating costs. Now, in terms of the other part of that survey, which was asking about the construction costs, that's a different question, right? There are one-time costs, right, at the time of construction, but for a large amount of money in the millions, the most likely source of funding would be a general obligation bond levy that needs to be voter approved. And ultimately, any decision to put something on the ballot is city council's to make. And I think what the goal of that survey was to help gauge the appetite for voter approved tax levies to fund things like the construction of a pool facility or the operation of that facility thereafter.
Okay.
I'd like to comment that just from the survey alone, though, I agree with Kim that I don't think the data is valid, and I think we should throw it away. Looking at Hood River's indoor pool with sports complex and everything at $500,000 versus Carlton Pool at $80,000 operating costs, it's a world of difference. And I think, myself looking at the survey, saying, oh my God, it's going to cost me $500,000 a year, or the town. That's a lot different than 80,000. I'm not saying anyone did anything wrong, and I know people no one made any mistakes here. It's just more of, I think that from the survey point of view, given the numbers, I just don't think we can use them. And I just don't want to be swayed either way. I don't think it's the citizens of Scappoose. I don't think it's representative of what their feelings are based on how the questions were worded, those numbers.
Dana?
So I had a couple of thoughts when I was reading through this. I mean, kind of similar to what you guys have brought up, but I just wanted everyone to note that the admissions do vary quite widely from, 16,000 for the Hefner pool, which is an outdoor, to, $300,000 a year from the Boardman pool. So I see what limitations are in trying to estimate that. And some of the things I also noted when I was looking through here was that most of these pools had significant sponsors, grants, or donations that were making up a large portion of their revenue. So, $160,000 donation for the Boardman pool plus a $340,000 grant. Yeah, it looks like they're making $500,000 a year on that pool, but it's all grant funded and sponsors. So I don't think that the survey that was sent out is inaccurate. I think it paints a picture that it's going to have to come from somewhere. One thing that I think was left out of it that's worth mentioning is that there isn't really, anytime you add a property tax, it takes it away from something else in our community that needs that, because there's a limit to how much our tax rate is. So you can't just raise property taxes as much as we want. We have rules in Oregon that limit that, which is why the fire district and the school districts and some of those other things weigh in when there's things that potentially reduce their tax revenue. So if we want a pool, it means we're going to have to give up something else. And I don't think that was accurately communicated in the survey. So I was concerned about that. I mean, someone could say, yeah, I'm willing to pay $500 a year, but then that means it's $500 that comes off of somewhere else. So I don't know. I think the pool survey as it is does give us some useful information. Are the numbers totally accurate? Probably not, but yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Isaac, did you want to weigh in?
I'll just say, I mean, Huel, I really appreciate the points you made. And Dana, you kind of alluded to this too. When you're talking about the construction of a pool, there's fixed costs. When you're talking about the operation, there's a lot of projection and assumptions that need to be made. And so I think this survey was premature before we kind of understood what the boundaries of those assumptions even could be. And so I think that's where the data is going to get skewed. Yes, Joel.
I'd just like to note that the pool survey was a result of council directive, and so the staff were just following council directions. So, I think the blame should be, if there is blame, or if there is some nuance to the problem, then it should be directed at council as opposed to staff.
Absolutely.
And Joel, I'd like to add, I don't want to blame anything. I just saying is we're digging deeper into it, and this is what we found. That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm not blaming anybody. I don't think anyone else is.
I think I would like to see, before we made an official motion, I would kind of like to see the data and see what we take from it. And I would also like to, I think one of the reasons that this council was formed, the GPAC, was that we wanted to kind of slow down some of these processes. We wanted to be thoughtful about them. We wanted to really lay out the data and have a really good understanding. And so I think this is kind of an example of something's going really fast, and then we go, whoa, wait, we have more questions, or we got this new data. Like, how could that have been added? But sometimes we only have, like, we can't do another pool survey. People will be upset even if we acquire new data. And so I think that this is kind of another thing that points to, we can absolutely slow down some of these processes, and we might gain a bit more insight through them. Do we have any other? Oh, Dana, do you have another comment? Okay. If we, as far as at this point in time, I think maybe we can have your comment go on record. Mm-hmm. And then once we see pool surveys, if we wanted to bring it up to council, we could address it further. Would that be okay?
Yeah, so what, if possible, if we could get some of the survey information that was presented to council. I unfortunately wasn't able to watch that last meeting. Or, when is this pool survey to close?
So the pool survey is closed. We did not have time in the agenda to bring that up at the last council meeting. Currently, it's slated to go before council on July 19th. Did I get the date correct, Isaac? Okay. When Isaac and I are drafting the staff report, we'll certainly mention the concerns that this committee has regarding the survey when we present to council.
Yeah, so once that information becomes available, I think that's something that the pool and road work group will kind of sort through. And then from there, ultimately one of our recommendations of information be disregarded for future decisions or included in future decisions.
It is very interesting to see the disparity between a sports complex, which I think some of them had up to $200,000 in just salary alone for people to take care of them, versus a pool that's open for 3 months. And the one thing that we don't have a handle on yet is, what does the citizens of Scappoose want? Do they want this sports complex that's a year-round thing that's going to be covered, or are they happy with just getting their feet wet in a pool for 2.5 months a year? That, if we can get that from the pool survey, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. I don't see any additional hands up, so I'm going to move on. Additional work group updates. I mostly shared our additional work group updates with information on learning about Cathead and kind of piecing that together. Kim or Dana, did you guys have any updates that you'd like to share?
Nope, just that we've identified those additional information needs and we'll continue to work on those.
Yep. Okay, so I am actually going to because I want to spend a little bit more time on the developing recommendations. So there were just a few things that I wanted to discuss tonight for our community forum, which is 2.5. There were just a couple of things that I wanted to tie down, and then I wanted to move to beginning the process for deliberation. One of the first things that I wanted to know is, so our date is currently set for July 10th. Do we have a time that we wanted to do it? We didn't discuss that last time. Do we want to do morning? Do we want to do mid-afternoon?
Sorry,
Any thoughts?
What day of the
What
week is that?
day of the week is
Oh, it's a
it?
Saturday, July 10th.
Personally, I'd suggest later in the day, on a weekend, people are going to be doing weekend stuff.
Okay. Do we want to do like a 2 p.m. kind of like midday, or we can do like a 5 p.m.
And I'm sorry, what is it exactly? Is this another meeting? What is it that you were proposing for this date?
So this is for the community forum.
I think we'd do better, get more response later in the day after people have been doing their weekend stuff.
Okay.
I think when we've done the annual town meetings in the past, they've been on a Saturday very early in the morning.
Uh-huh.
And attendance is tougher super early in the morning.
Okay. All right. I would be fine with a 5 p.m. kind of an evening. Everybody's gone out, done their stuff, and then it's also going to be a little bit cooler for us because it is mid-July. So that might be something nice if it's more in the evening. Okay, so 5 p.m.
Are you gonna have food there?
Oh, that's a good idea. No, probably not. We probably don't have a budget for food. 4 p.m. How about 4 p.m.? Before dinner. All right. Do I have a motion to adopt 4 p.m.?
Motion to adopt.
All right. A second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, perfect. So my next thought, and what I'd really love to have everybody thinking about, we don't have to have all the answers now, but I would like to develop a secondary group. At this point in time, we've got a lot of our information for like the road pool, the amenities, the watershed. So we most likely won't be having many meetings for those anymore. So I would like to see if we can have a small group who would be wanting to work on the nuts and bolts of this outside of here so that we can spend the majority of our time in here working on deliberation and prioritizing parks. So do I have any volunteers? I'm looking for like 3 or 4 people who would like to work on this outside of here.
Work on, what's the deliverables?
So working
Deliverables.
Right. So working on just the setup, getting the things that we need together, working on getting the word out, that kind of stuff. So that way we're not spending as much time within here because I don't know that we'll have the time
The word out for the
for the community forum.
So I would say outlining the structure of
Oh.
like how that actually occurs,
Right.
how that's advertised to the community, what preliminary work there may need to be done.
I don't mind taking over the Facebook area to get it on the
Yeah,
sites and stuff.
that would be fantastic.
I'm already doing that for the Centennial, so.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Jim.
Yeah, I know one of the concerns was whether or not there'd be an opportunity to include information in the monthly newsletter that goes out with our water bills. And I don't know specifically when things would have to be available, but it seems like if the newsletter has already been put together, it wouldn't be that hard to put another insert in that envelope, even if it's just a 3x5 card or something.
The next newsletter, so the one that went to print at the beginning of this month, that's gone to print. It should be in folks' mailboxes sometime by the middle of next week, if not sooner. So we won't make the newsletter because the next newsletter in July will come out towards the end of the month.
Okay.
So we'll have to be diligent about getting it out on social media. And from the city's perspective, we can post things on our city Facebook as well as the city app. We do also have a city council meeting between now. Actually, we have a city council meeting on Monday. This is something that we could have mentioned at city council if that helps.
That would be
More
helpful.
information will be
Absolutely.
coming.
And anybody that wants to send information to me, I will be more than glad to share it on the Off Leash Dog Park Facebook page as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim.
Do we have a location?
That was also on my list, was getting a location. I'm thinking just Grabhorn Park, right? I mean, we could just have could we have like a setup there? That's one of the thoughts. One of my questions also is, how do we want to deliver this? Do we want, there was suggestions earlier on where people could have, Post-its and kind of like live interactive things. But I think that could be something we would discuss like in the separate group. But my thoughts are just having it in Grabhorn so people can kind of start like look around, visualize things, get a feel for it. Dana?
You might also consider that shelter over at Chief Concomly. I know you can't see Grabhorn as well, but it would at least give you some shade, some tables, that kind of thing. Maybe a little protection from wind if you're going to set up easels or something.
The one thing that comes to mind, the one thing that does come to mind to me is if it is at Veterans, the Grabhorn property, you're right, there's very little shade.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I know the city has a couple of 10 by 10, pop-up tents.
Okay.
But maybe even less than that. I'll look into that and see if that's something that is a possibility. Dana, do you know if there are any other, if the Watershed Council has anything like that?
No, we just have those tiny little ones.
Okay. So to your point about Chief Concomly Park, it is true that gazebo is pretty large. It definitely has shaded space and parking, but I understand the point where it's kind of detached from the parcel that the committee will be presenting on. But that's just my thoughts.
Joel just suggested that Chief Concomly would also, he's in support of Chief Concomly as well, because you can easily just, everything's kind of all set up there and you can easily just walk over to view it. So that might be an easier process.
Do we
Anybody?
have access to a microphone or something, like a portable? Because some people have soft voices. It's hard to be heard.
Do we have access to a microphone?
Like a portable PA type thing.
I know we've borrowed one from the library district in the past. Not sure about power out there. We'll get back to you on that via email early next week.
A lot of those little systems are battery operated too. So.
Okay.
And I do know that Dan's Rental has one that's very cheap. I think it was like $10 for the day.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim.
As far as Concomly Park, anybody that's going to be showing up, I think, is already going to be familiar with what we're there talking about. So that I don't think it's going to be a problem having it at Concomly rather than actually out in the middle of the field at Grabhorn.
Okay. Dana.
Nothing, sorry.
Okay. Mary.
Just a couple comments, and it sounds like maybe we're steering away from Grabhorn. I had some concerns about how well maintained that area is right now. I don't know if it's mowed consistently. So anyway, I just thought walking out in long grass or longer grass is not terribly appealing. And I support the Chief Concomly using that gazebo, the acoustics. You know, if we're doing the meeting in the gazebo area, I think the acoustics would be a lot better. So, you know, somebody who's able to project their voice, they may not even need a microphone in that space.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
Last I was at Comly like about a week and a half ago, and the grass is pretty well cut down over there. So I don't think there's any tall grass there. It looked like they kept everything pretty well mowed down, so it shouldn't be a problem or anything. I just had a thought. Would it help to maybe take some flags and like mark like this is where the pool may go? This is your little hiking trail around the. Can we put little flags out there so people can actually walk over there and kind of see? Would that help during the forum, or would that be something we could do? I'm just
At that
curious.
point,
So
I think at that point, we're hopeful to have 4 different options, so that might be hard to flag it. But we
okay.
might have maybe try to make it some way that's interactive in a way, like whether we had like brochures that they can kind of walk over and orient themselves or something like that.
Okay,
Would it be possible
maybe.
to get easels or something visual for people to look at?
That would be my
Yeah.
preference, to be able to have, because I have a few things that I know that I would like to discuss. I'd really like to be able to lay out a little bit of how we came to this process, our different options, the things we've learned. So yeah, I think being able to present that on easels would be fantastic, and then some sort of interactive opportunity where people can really get in there and you know, see the space and give us feedback. Yeah, that's my hope.
I have some of those easel stands with a clip up the top. We got those for a town meeting back in 2019, early 2019. So
Perfect.
take an inventory of those and I'll let you know what I've got.
Thank you. Jim, your hand is still, do you have a question? Okay. Well, I've got one volunteer so far. So maybe after tonight's meeting, if you could just email me if anybody's interested, even if just giving ideas or helping out in some fashion. We'll continue to bring this up. Just having a couple people that I can be brainstorming with would be really helpful. Okay, so let's move on to beginning. We're at least just going to discuss the processes for how we're going to plan out the parks tonight. So my hope is I'm really a visual person. So what I'd like to do is planning with Zoom meetings and just kind of looking at people is a little bit challenging because we're getting into the meat and potatoes of it all, where we really want to sit and kind of visualize and lay things out. So one of my thoughts was kind of laying out, okay, what amenities do we have on the table? The top 5 amenities, and then the softball fields and the soccer fields and the dog park. You know, what are our constraints? And beginning to really lay out, okay, what is something that we need to take off the table? Like what does not work for this space at all? And like what is something that is our number one go-to? So that's kind of my thoughts on how I'd like to see this process go. My hope is that as we do this, we can get more people in this space, because I think that'll be a little bit easier for planning. Kim, did you want to weigh in on part of the process?
Yeah, I think we just need to, as groups, kind of bring our priorities to the table and
Mhm.
see how we negotiate all of those, and then ultimately prioritize them for presentation to the city council. And I don't know if that's like spreadsheet exercise or you know, how we go about identifying what those top priorities are. But just beginning to think through that process of how we now begin to aggregate this information and sort through it.
Jim, I'm sorry, you have your hand raised. Do you have a comment on that?
Apologies.
Okay.
So maybe, I mean, maybe a reasonable starting point is that each of the subcommittees just kind of lay out in a couple bullet points, here are the considerations, here are the recommendations and some of the permutations of the recommendations
Okay.
given other factors. And then we just bring that all together and see
Okay.
how we best sort that out.
Okay. We've got 15 more minutes tonight. So this is ultimately like we can begin this process. I mean, I think the biggest challenge for me is like just the starting point. So one of the first things that I was kind of thinking was as we look at this list, so we have the pool and the road and our potential options, right? And then we've got 93% of people wanted a creekside trail, 93%. So when we're looking at that, that's pretty astounding, and I think something that we should really consider. But are there anything that we just look at that and we say, when we look at the amenities, we say like, this is not feasible for this site. Do we have any of those main things when we look at this space? We say like this really based off of the things that we've seen, based off of the survey results, anything that just pops out that says that this is maybe not ideal.
I'd like to, as an avid disc golf player, I don't think there's space for disc golf. And discs, which I love, they're hard.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone gets hit in the head with those, I mean, disc golf courses are normally, if they're in a park, they're in a certain section of a park in a completely different section. If we want the Grabhorn area to also have walking trails and maybe multi-use path or whatever, or ball field, I think disc golf is great. I think it belongs in our town. I don't see it working in that space myself.
Yeah.
As a disc golf player, and I actually have a disc golf one hole in my But is that the kind of stuff that we think we can bring to council and say there was people that wanted it but not in the space?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I also did share with everybody like the full inventory of our parks. Thank you, Huel. So that way we can say, like I've gone through and I've seen the parks and maybe disc golf isn't appropriate here, but hey, Parks and Rec Committee, like beyond this, can we talk about flagging this for this park? And that way we're not just thinking about just this park. I mean, this is really speeding up the process for us for Parks and Rec Committee because we are really learning so much about the things that people want in this community. And that will really help us for other parks, which is fantastic. And so that's also something I want to encourage people to bring to the table is, hey, I love this idea, but it isn't going to fit here. But I think it might fit here. And we just table that for when full sessions of Parks and Rec reconvene, and then we bring that discussion up later. But it's not lost because we now know that it's really important to our community. Dana?
Because this is my last meeting, I'm just gonna lay out what I think would be reasonable and you guys can take it from there. But I think the original plan of having a pool and sports fields is not really an option, a feasible option on the same property based on the effects on other amenities, just the amount of space, parking, all those things. So I think whatever plan has to choose either one of those. And then my other thought was just that it's become pretty clear to me through the process of the surveys and our discussion that having the walking trails and the dog park seem to be the top priorities. They're the most used things, the most requested things. They're also the lower maintenance and cheaper cost things. So when we're thinking about a plan, maybe we think about like phase 1 could be putting in the trail, expanding the dog park or putting it where it's going to be. And then phase 2 would be either the sports park or the pool or whatever the other amenities are. And phase 3 would be, the bigger items. So I just want to put that out there that I think probably the dog park and the nature trails were the top priorities for me that I saw.
I think that's great input, Dana. Another thing, and this was suggested, and I don't know if I've mentioned it to the group as a whole, but Tim Holmelson, who does the maintenance, he is at that dog park every day, or he is at Veterans every day. And so he had just so much great insight on what happens there. Dog park is the 're1 utilized aspect of that park. But he was also suggesting that if we do present something that has a pool, that the pool be absolutely phase 3, and we have the soccer field where the pool potentially will go one day. So that way we can do something kind of more in the here and the now, and then as funding comes in for the pool, then we can discuss it further. But I think the idea of phasing is going to be really, really important, because we also have to plan for what if we don't get that grant. And so what things are feasible without a grant? And it may be 2 things. So phasing it out is going to be really, I think, a really important way that we look at this park to get things going instead of relying on grants to come in.
Another thing is that the pool isn't necessarily conducive to the park itself. By that I mean a small pool can probably fit on a city lot, like a double city lot, and yet we've got all this space. But you can't switch them over. What I'm saying is, you can't make space. This is great space, but we could put a pool somewhere else, and that's a nice wild card to have, especially if we do a small pool. So it's just kind of interesting, like hearing that the maintenance aspects are so much lower for something natural.
Yeah.
I think we should bring that to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
I'd like to ask, has there been any update or any idea about trying to get a better relationship with the school system and their parks?
So that was discussed at City Council. It's out there, and I believe Megan Greisen said that she was. Is that correct? Is she the liaison to the schools? Okay. So she was the counselor who had firsthand experienced like the frustration with not having access to fields, and so the mayor had suggested it, and she said, "Oh, maybe that's something that that she should potentially work on." So I think that's out there. That has been something that we as Parks and Recs have been talking about for a while now. I think it's time that we dig deep and figure out how possible that is. But I don't know that we can do it within the span of this.
So I didn't see it, but I was told that there is a sign on the tennis courts that says operated by the city of Scappoose. And Peter McHugh told me that. That was a deal back when where the city was actually in charge of the tennis courts. The only reason I bring that up is no one seems to know. And so it just seems that there's a lot of cloudiness with regards to relationships and everything like that. Parks Master Plan actually called out to have 2 more tennis courts built to the north of the current ones, because there's a spot there. And that could be a place for pickleball as well. And again, it's just interesting because it's kind of this vague hole, but yet we're all in this small little town together.
Yeah. I would agree. I think there are so many opportunities to bring what we have together and figure out ways to have people access it, and in maybe a way that makes it easier for people to understand where those things are. Go ahead.
As far as I'm not aware of a tennis court that's maintained by the city. but I will certainly check into it and get back to you next week.
This is what,
First I've heard it.
This is what Peter told me just the other day. So maybe it's not maintained, which is why there's holes all over it.
But I think those are the things that, we're when we do this at this accelerated process, all of a sudden you really start to see like, oh wow, like there's a hole here and there's a hole here and there's a hole here. We had Michael Sykes popped out and talked to us earlier, and he's like, yeah, when I first started, none of this was here. And so these are the opportunities for us to really learn, like, okay, where are these deficits and what can we as Parks and Rec, how can we help to manage this? Jim?
Yeah, just an observation. Everything at Grabhorn seems still to revolve around the road. It's the possibilities of what will and will not work, certainly for the dog park, and access through and safety measures and so on. It seems like the road is an obvious thorn in the side of a lot of people as well, and addressing that or making clarifying that aspect of it, I think is going to be crucial to just about everything over there.
I would agree. And that was one of the things that I had brought up because it's hard to, it was hard for me to visualize how a park would be laid out. Because if I present something to you and then something different like a 2-lane through road goes in, and this is somewhere where we had placed like a playground, then it's hard when you don't have that full information. And when I presented that, that's where they had suggested, well, since we're still learning data, maybe bring your top priorities instead of a full layout. And then also that is how the mayor suggested, maybe present an option with a road and no road. But you are right, it definitely creates some challenges with our planning.
Yeah, and referring as you were to the natural area as opposed to structures and so on. Basically the road's going to take a big chunk of what could be park, and I mean, it's easy enough to put a small parking lot on either side and that kind of thing without interfering with everything through the park. So it's just my opinion.
Absolutely. And when we go to council, I mean, one thing, I mean, I was kind of envisioning like, okay, we go there and we have kind of like something really set in stone, but some of this may be just our recommendations. Like after months, after these weeks of deliberating, we really came up with the thought that this really isn't gonna, we don't feel like this is a good use of park space. And so we have the opportunity, this is giving us the voice to be able to present those findings. Mary?
Yeah, just kind of a comment as well. And thinking about resources, if we're trying to make the most, extend our financial resources as far as we possibly can, right? And going back to the road, and if they're looking to put that road through, they're going to need to, take down the dog park, which we know that that's a source of contention. But also there's that shed there that when they built Veterans Park, they repaired the shed or put in a new one. Honestly, I've lived here and I don't recall exactly if that was brand new or if it was repaired, but they, the city has a shed where they keep their lawn equipment and, a variety of things as well. So that is going to have to be removed. And another observation just this last week in preparation for the centennial celebration in the area that's slated to be paved for the overflow parking, they put in irrigation. So that's, again, to me, wasted resources. They've used manpower to put in a sprinkler system in this space that ultimately would need to be completely undone. So it's just not, it's not a good use of resources. It's a waste of money, in my opinion.
I think as we collect more data, I think those are absolute pertinent findings that we need to be, that we can be presenting. Okay, it is 7 o'clock. So action items for our next meeting. I would like everyone to meet with their groups and come to our next meeting with like the top priorities of your groups. What would you absolutely like to see happen in these parks? And then with some of your constraints, and then also if you deliberate and decide that something just is absolutely not feasible that was within your group, then I would like you guys to come to that table, bring that to the table as well. Also, if you guys can make it in, I think we can kind of set it up as a little bit more of a work group, so that people can be in here and we can be discussing back and forth. That might be a bit easier if you're comfortable.
Since it's coming up pretty quickly, I'm going to start the Facebook thing pretty much right away. If anyone like to have a certain message or whatever on the Facebook, this is about the
community forum.
Please send me a note, because whether it be something that you think is important to be noted or whatever, just please let me know.
Okay. Do we need to do anything to reserve Chief Concomely for that day?
Not that I'm aware of, but
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and mark the calendar
Perfect.
and make
Okay.
note of that with our staff.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Okay.
I'd say one thing. I just like to, you brought up the convergence of interest between the school district and the city. And it's absolutely true. It relates to the pool. It relates to park and recreation or safety.
Yes.
You name it. And that can easily and should be probably included in the ad hoc consideration, going forward, because we need to develop that convergence much more effectively than we have in the past.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we have limited space, and so we have to make use of what we have and make it easier for our citizens to access recreational opportunities, without a doubt. Okay. All right. All right, everyone, have a good night.
Thank you.